Hi, good afternoon. I have an absolute pleasure today of welcoming Carl Chinn. So it's Professor Carl Chinn MBE, just to give me his correct title. Carl, I've known and followed and watched for many, many years. He's slightly older than me, but I feel as if he's 100 years old because of the amount of things that he's done. So if we can, we're going to look at your professional career, Carl, and we're going to talk about that and things like that. I'm going to give you the opportunity of introducing yourself. But I think for me, it's something, the social history and Birmingham and all around Birmingham, the region, the manufacturing, everything you say, everything you do works for me. And I'm delighted that you've agreed to come on to the Downtown Business Den, Birmingham, to talk about Birmingham, mine and your favourite subject, I think.
Oh, thanks for inviting me, and hello to everybody this afternoon.
Carl, you were born at Sorrento Hospital, 1956. Now, everybody get your pen out. 6th of September is his birthday. So fairly key birthdays coming up and things like that. Your dad worked in the city, you know, you're around the Sparkbrook, the inner sort of suburbs of Birmingham. Your dad was a bookmaker. You became a bookmaker. And then one of my first questions is going to be, how come you're not doing that now? And how come you managed to go to Moseley School and end up at Birmingham University? But before we do that, take a minute or two of just introduce yourself, and if you can tell us a little brief about your history and what made it work for you as a child. Yeah, that would be incredible. Thank you.
I'll be delighted to. Sunday afternoons shout out to me. I mean, when we were growing up, Paul, I mean, you are younger than me, but I think you will remember 6 o'clock, sing something simple. 7 o'clock, sing something simple. Sunday was over. That's all we had was 1 hour of picking your pops. But Sunday afternoons was special in our house. And I think in a lot of houses of people from a working class background, because families met up and they'd start talking about the old end. Mum from Aston Cross, Dad from Sparkbrook, my nan, Grandad Perry was from Highgate, and there'd Auntie Wynne, there'd be uncles, popping in great uncles and great aunts. And from an early age, Paul, I was surrounded by history. I didn't realise it at the time. Now I do, how important those family stories were. I was fortunate in that Dad was a bookmaker, and so, excuse me, I'll turn that phone off.
I'll carry on talking for you. Dad was a bookmaker. Yeah.
So the old man was a bookie, Mum was a factory worker. They did quite well. Well, Dad did very well. So me and my brother, we grew up better off. But
do you want to sort your phone out, Carl?
I don't know what's that. No, my wife's got it. It's all right.
Okay.
So
all right.
We grew up well off economically.
Yeah.
Dad was doing very well with the bookmaking, but Mum and Dad were fiercely proud to be working class. All Mum's family still lived either in back-to-back houses or later on they were moved to Castle Vale, Pipe Hayes, places which were big council estates, King Standing.
Yeah.
That side were better off economically, but were still fiercely proud to be working class. So I was very fortunate, Paul, in that I didn't grow up poor, far from it, but my mum and dad drilled it into me, my nan, my aunt, Dad Perry, aunties, to be proud of where we come from and how fortunate I was to be the first one in my family to be able to go to a grammar school, to be able to stay on at school past 16, to get a university education. I was 2 generations removed from the poverty that my nan and my granddads grew up in the 1900s.
I mean,
so I realised how lucky I was.
To go to a grammar school is incredible. So you're academically bright enough at that time, and your parents had the foresight to push you in that direction. So Dad, as a bookmaker, making a good living, suddenly thought, no, I'm going to look at my son. I want something different from my son, which was...
Yeah, I think the whole family did. Not just Mum and Dad, we're from a very big and strong extended family. Yeah. Nan was still working in a factory, Benton and Stone in Aston. My Auntie Wynne worked at the Midland Wheel in Avenue Road. My Uncle George worked in the scrapyard in Adderley Street, where you come from, Paul. So although we grew up better off economically, it was that belief that you owe something back, that I had aunts and uncles on my nan's side who passed the 11 plus but couldn't afford to go to grammar school because of the cost of the books, the cost of the uniform, but also the loss of wage at 14. So there I am, I take the 11 plus and I go to Moseley Grammar, which was up the road from where we live. And the first day, I was in short trousers, because a lot of us were still wearing short trousers in them days till we were 13. I had a cap on, and our nan, so proud that our car was going to grammar school, had bought me, everybody else is going with a knapsack on the back.
Yeah.
Our nan bought me a briefcase. It was half the size of me. I was only a little kid. It was half the size, but because she was so proud, she used to sit doing my Latin homework with me. And I'd be going, now you have the book, I've got to read these out. And I'd be going, master. And eventually I'd go, I won't tell you what I said, because she was a proper Aston woman. They kept me totally and utterly grounded, as does my wife Kay, who's from a big council estate in Dublin. They kept me grounded and made me realise how fortunate I was. And I wanted, as I grew older, I felt it's important that we start to fight for those opportunities, whether it be academic or vocational, Paul, because I've got no skills in them hands. I admire people with skills. All my family were factory workers on mum's side. My wife Kay's a hairdresser. I admire the skills that they've got. I haven't got no other skills.
I think for me, we both come from a similar background where obviously my older sister Deborah was the first one to go to university. I couldn't go to university. I was dyslexic, but we couldn't afford it. So it was Deborah was the brightie. She went to university, and she's done okay for herself. You know, that kind of stuff. The region and everything else. I think me and you have so much in common, and the way that we were talking this afternoon is like it's me and you going to be sitting in a pub having a pint together, talking about the region and talking about some of the things going on. There's only one thing that we really disagree with, isn't there? Now, unfortunately, you have the displeasure or pleasure, whichever way you want to go, with being a Villa fan. Now, you described the most ambassadorial, representation of Birmingham, your knowledge, what you've done, your attributes, your contributions to the city. It's fantastic, but I understand when you step into the Villa ground or, onto the terraces, something happens to you, Carl, doesn't it?
Yeah, the old man used to say when he was alive, he says, Carl, you're the most tolerant, inclusive, embracing person I've ever met until it comes to walking through the turnstiles at Villa Park. He said it's like something twirls your head around and you turn into this rabid Clarence and Blue bigot. Only see Clarence and Blue.
And one of the amusing interactions we've had over the last few months, we created a mural in Digbeth, and you came and you spoke eloquently. You held an audience of, the chief of police was there, Dave Thompson, a few councillors, Ian Ward was there, and everybody else was there. You couldn't have heard a pin drop, so you were talking fantastically. And then I said that we'd been invited to do something at the Blues ground, all going to charity. And you just went, I'm not doing that. I'll support you 1,000,000% for your charitable contributions. I'm not stepping foot in that ground.
I couldn't do it for two reasons. One, because it wouldn't be right as a Villa fan doing that. I stick up for Birmingham. Outside, I want the Blues to do well, Paul. I want the Blues to do well, the Albion to do well, Wolves, Coventry, all the West Midlands teams. But I think it's really, football is a passion and it's about the family. And I went down the match. The first time I went to the match was with our mum and our nan. And the second match, we lost 6-2 at home to Chelsea. September 1966, I was 9, just before my 10th birthday. Yeah. And the first fight I ever seen was our nan down the Villa. 4-11 of fighting Aston. 4-11 of fighting Aston. And away back, we were playing Sheffield United, was walking past, it was 0-0. And in them days, we were still standing together, home and away. And took our kid's hat off, threw it on the floor, and I turned round. This is my granddaughter, I'm so sorry.
Oh, bless her.
And she threw it on the floor. He threw it on the floor, and I turned round and hit him with a right hook, and that was that.
So we might be able to get £250 for that show on Saturday night with something else going wrong. We've had your phone, we've had the granddaughter in. What else? I think Tina just mentioned, I expect a lot of viewers right now, including me, was born in Sorrento Maternity Hospital, which is fabulous. And it's just a good point now, just to say to our viewers, if you've got any questions or anything like that for me, for Carl, or anything you want us to debate, just put it up on the screen and we'll give you our honest opinions about things. We'll leave football there, Carl. So I want to talk about your education.
Just quickly, can I tell Tina where the name Sorrento comes from?
Go on.
Because obviously it was a big old Victorian house
Yeah.
the going into Moseley before St Mary's Road and Wakefield Road, and the family who put it up, they loved holidaying in Sorrento.
Oh, okay.
So when it took over as a maternity hospital, that's what it got called, and then it took over other houses nearby.
And it just grew and grew and grew from there.
Grew and grew.
Well, I was Loveday Street. That's where we were supposed to be. Mum went there, and unfortunately, I was ended up born on the floor of a back-to-back house in Ballston Green.
Yeah.
So you had a little bit of a better.
Yeah, you're a proper city kid. You beat me on that one.
So I'm going to talk about your education. So grammar school and then Birmingham University.
Yeah.
What was it like going to Birmingham University as a working class lad? That was a shock to the system.
First of all, I went to Manchester.
Okay.
But I only lasted 2.5 weeks.
Right.
I wasn't going to go to university. From the age of 13, I'd worked in the betting shops in Sparkbrook. Again, that added to my love of social history, particularly the spoken word of working class people. Listening to stories that the older punters told me about not only themselves and their families, but about my great-granny and granddad, who many of them knew. I worked in the business from the age of 13. We had 2 armed robberies. I had a pistol on my head the first time, a starting pistol, my temple the second time. Dad was determined that, and Mum and all my aunts and uncles, you've got to go to university. So I said, no, I ain't going. So I didn't put Birmingham down. I put Manchester, I put Leeds, I put York, because I was being bloody minded, I suppose, Paul, saying I ain't going to go to university, I'm going to work. And the results come through and they were good. And on the Sunday, as I should have gone, and before I should have gone, I was still moaning, I'm not going to go. And my great uncle George turned up. He'd been in the 2nd Battalion SAS in the Second World War, behind enemy lines after Normandy, when the big push was on against the German army. He had hands like shovels, and he used to scrape bits of swarf out of them working in the scrapyard. My great uncle Bill was a polisher, could hardly breathe because of all the metal on his lungs. Our nan, finger missing there, her index finger missing, lost it in a power press. Mum and Dad, and they all started berating me. What are you doing? We've worked all our lives so that somebody in the future would have an opportunity to do something different. And I realised it really brought it home to me how important it was, not just for me to go to university, but it was for my family. Went to Manchester, I was in a halls of residence, and the tutors were very good, but it was alien, Paul, it was alien. It was like Tom Brown's school days. It was a big old-fashioned, or you had to wear a mortarboard and cake to dinner, tea of an evening. And I was very homesick. Everything I wanted in life was in Birmingham. And I came back the second week, and the Villa was playing us home. I came back on the evening, met my mates in the hole in the wall in Dale End, met Mum and Dad after. They had a shock of their lives. What are you doing back home? I explained how I was. And I was very fortunate again, Paul. I was very fortunate again. In that, when I went back to Manchester, I said, I'm leaving. The tutor said, I think you should stay on at university. I'm going to see if I can arrange an interview at Birmingham. And I was so lucky that I got an interview at Birmingham and was accepted, because I wouldn't have stayed on.
I mean, that did us a fantastic favour, really, that little twist. You ended up at Birmingham University. Birmingham University was interesting because, 1990, you were around Birmingham University. You were contracted to lecture at Birmingham University, wasn't you? That was a major gig, that was. That was a big thing, wasn't it, to do?
It was a big thing, because I'd been out of work for a long time in the 80s.
I didn't realise that.
Yeah, we sold the betting shops in 84.
Yeah.
We had another armed robbery. That was the second one I was telling you about, with a starting pistol at my temple. And the old man decided, we're getting out now. And we sold up. I was finishing my doctorate. I ended up having to sign on the dole. It was a very upsetting period in my life. My wife was brilliant. Kay kept us going. She kept me going mentally and emotionally as well. I hated signing on, as I think 99.9% of men and women do.
Yeah.
Found it very, very hard. They sent me, I got my doctorate in that time. They sent me on a retraining course, and I just got my PhD. And the bloke said, this is a bit daft. He says, you just got your PhD. He said, have you ever thought of going on the Enterprise Allowance Scheme?
I remember that.
So I said, well, what is it? He says, well, you get £40 a week tax-free. We'll knock your money up through, I suppose they call it universal credit today, but then it would be the equivalent of Social Security, to what you were on the dole. I had just started doing adult education classes for the Birmingham University, what they used to call extramurals department, Paul, and the Workers' Educational Association, brilliant organisation that reaches out to people and gave me my first chance. But out of, if you were earning, say, 15 or 20 pound a week in them days on the dole, they took 15 of it. You could only keep a fiver. So there was a disincentive to find work. So this guy from the Department of Employment says, if you go on the Enterprise Allowance Scheme, you can then keep what you're earning teaching-wise. So I had a year on that, a couple of years part-time employed. I got a part-time job at Faircroft Adult Education College in Salio. Learned a huge amount there, Paul, from students, because I think as a teacher you're always learning, but particularly learning from adult education students. Signing on again then in the long summer vacation. Finally got a half-time role there, and then in 1990 got a 2-year temporary contract at the University of Birmingham. So that was a massive thing after 6 years of being on the dole, being on the Enterprise Allowance Scheme, and then being really part-time work and signing on in the summer, etc.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a big thing.
But in 2002, you became a full professor at the university, didn't you?
Yes, yeah.
You know, and you gave them, I'm gonna say 32 years worth of service. Was it around that?
Yeah, well, I got my degree there. I did my doctorate there.
Yeah.
I started part-time teaching there in 88. Temporary job 1990, full-time job 92, and then finished there a few years ago.
So it was during the Blitz you were training.
Don't be cheeky.
And you know that. But I mean, the social history, isn't it? So your years of experience and things like that, and your academic interest has come from what? Why have you got the years 1860, 1960, if that's right?
Yeah.
Why that era?
I think a couple of things there, Paul. That the period of unemployment, I would not want to go back to it again.
Yeah.
And people who haven't been out of work need to understand the hardships. We were lucky. I was lucky. I got a wife. I got mum and dad to come over. Mum and dad were well off. Do you know what I mean? So I didn't. We struggled, but it wasn't. It was nowhere near poverty. Nowhere near. I wouldn't dream of saying that. But it was tough, and it gave me an appreciation of the need to understand real hardship, and that reinforced what really I was learning from my mum and dad and my nan and granddad. Our mum, nan, granddad, telling me about their times, having Daily Mail boots, would have been barefooted.
Got it. So it was that period of time that you experienced, you lived, that really caught your imagination.
Yes, I was already very keen on the late 19th, early 20th centuries through the family tours.
Yeah.
Because through the family, my dad's dad, my granddad Chinn was born in 1891.
Okay.
My granddad Perry on my mum's side was 1906. Our nan was 1914. So I remember sitting on our granddad's knee. I remember a Victorian. Yeah, so I was back into that late period, but being out of work made me write, I really hope this, with more empathy and more passion for poorer people who have been excluded, have been left out, who are looked down on and should not be looked down on.
I think for me, your passion has never gone. I think you're the type of man, if you won the lottery, you'd probably give majority of it away and you'd never lose your way and everything like that. You are what you are down to the core, which is fantastic. I'm looking at 2002. You've just become a full professor at Birmingham University, an incredible university, you know, pretty much I use this term quite often, jewel in the crown for Birmingham and things like that. Clearly, I'm going to advocate BCU, you know, because obviously I'm very biased towards BCU. We'll jewel on that point a little bit later on. But 2002 was a particularly good year for you, wasn't it? You know, it was a good vintage year. Something else happened to you. Yeah, well, you were presented with the opportunity of an MBE. Clearly, you took that and you become Carl Chinn MBE. How did that feel? What was that like?
It was an amazing thing. Mum and Dad were very strong, and the family I belonged to, very strong royalists. Yeah. And to get a letter from Her Majesty's, the Queen, was really, really important for them.
Yeah.
I felt that the MBE wasn't just for me. It was for services to local history. I could not have been involved with the history that I write if I hadn't learned from older people. So Kay said to me, she says, Carl, this isn't just for you. I said, no, I know, Bab. I said, it's for the people I belong to. They're not my people, Paul. I belong to them.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And she says, why don't you announce on the radio that you're going to have a drink at the Old Crown in Derry End and people could come along? And it was costing, well over 100 people turned up. The Birmingham Irish Pipe and Drums piped outside, and we had a celebration. It wasn't just for me.
Yeah.
And I still regard that MBE as.
Yeah.
Because it's about local history, our history.
I'll remember that point. I think that's wonderful. I think what I want to talk about now, I've known you and I've followed you for many, many years. I've been to quite a few book launches and stuff like that. The quiet one sitting in the back, watching you, listening to you, talking to you. My concern was I checked last week about how many books you'd written and how many books you'd launched. Now, knowing you, I rechecked at 12 o'clock today, because between last week and this week, I thought he might have knocked a couple out, you know, that kind of stuff. You know what he's like. So we're at 33 books now, and I'm looking at you for confirmation of that.
Yeah.
But I understand that, I wouldn't be surprised, and I truly hope that we do, that we hit 100 books coming from you. But we've got a new book coming out, haven't we?
Yeah.
And a new book that's coming out, it's all about, I'm going to do this because you're going to like this, Carl. All about the Peaky Blinders, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the book I wrote last year, or was published last year, Peaky Blinders, The Real Story, I wanted to look at the realities. The series has been brilliant for Birmingham. Whether you like the series or not, whether it grabs you or not, you cannot deny that it's done something very special for Birmingham.
Of course it has.
And it's drawn attention to us. But there's a reality behind the drama. And the reality is bloody. It's brutal. It's violent. It's not romantic. And I think it's really important to get that message over, especially I do a lot of teaching of local history projects in schools. And a lot of youngsters think that gangs, not necessarily the Peaky Blinders, but gangs full stop, is something glamorous. It's not glamorous. It's dirty and vile. And I think it's really important to show the reality. So the book last year was really looking at the Peaky Blinders who were put down in the early 20th century, before the First World War. The follow-up I've just finished looks at their legacy. And their legacy was England's first major gangland war. Men who had been Peaky Blinders formed a gang, a loose gang, a real conglomeration, a jumble of little groups of 5 and 6 called the Birmingham Gang. And they blackmailed bookmakers, and they also intimidated racegoers. They pickpocketed, and they were horrible men. And they controlled the rackets on the racecourses in England and took over down south. That led them into a gangland war with the Sabinis. Derby Sabini's featured in the series. He was an Anglo-Italian, not Italian. He saw himself as an Englishman. And it led to England's first major gangland war. So that's what I've just finished writing about.
Brilliant. And I'm going to sell your books for you because you missed one point. Your last book has now been translated into how many different languages?
I think it's 8 now different languages. It's just had the Spanish edition, the Italian edition, Portuguese, Polish, Dutch, and there's a few others. So
I'm going to say that you've got more books than there are Witherspoons in Birmingham, which is quite an accolade for us to have. What's really interesting now is Peaky Blinders has been fascinating, and I've seen various different reports about what it's brought to the economy and what it's done for us and things like that, which is really interesting. And I'm also looking at all these questions and points that are flying through. So I'm going to jump about and things like that.
Fine,
I'm going to look at this and a couple of things there. So in no particular order, Paul Turner made a point about Carl editing the history of the West Bromwich Building Society. Fantastic record of a great black country institution. Joe Moxley, great point. How do you both think universities can better increase the widening participation of underrepresented and disadvantaged students attending universities and seeding once there?
It's really important, and it is like, coming back to the question you asked earlier, it was like an alien environment because you're talking a different language. And I'll give you an example of that. I was giving a seminar, a talk to some distinguished professors. I was just studying for my doctorate. And I pronounced this man's name, B-A-G-E-H-O-T, as Baggy Hot. And this bloke at the end took great pleasure in demeaning me, say, by the way, it's not Baggy Hot, it's Badgett. And I hadn't got a clue. Nobody had taught me that. So I think the point was it Jones just made about widening participation. Universities talk a lot, particularly the red brick universities, Oxford and Cambridge on top of those, about opening it up. Lots more needs to be done. Need to be going into communities, not start sitting there and wait for the community to come to you. We need to get out. I'm no longer associated with the University of Birmingham, but all of these universities need to get into communities, and they need to start. They've been very successful with regard to widening participation as lecturers with gender. But there's still a massive, massive problem with not widening participation with regard to class and ethnicity and to race.
I'm going to sell BCU to you now, because 60% of BCU students are from Birmingham, 20% are from the very local vicinity, and the other 10% are from overseas, 10% are others. So BCU is the university for the city, which is quite interesting. A couple of other things.
I don't agree with that.
Paolo says, great afternoon, Professor Paul, Professor Carl. Thank you for your talk. Could you both please advocate the preservation of the historic Eagle and Sun pub on Banbury Street under threat of the demolition of the, he says, from the pointless new HS2. I'll disagree with that. We need HS2, but having said that,
I've got to agree with Paolo though, Paul, because we've lost the Fox and Grapes.
Incredible pub.
We lost the Fox and Grapes. Yeah. Why did they knock that down? It's just a pile of rubble. That building went back to the late 18th century. I don't think there's anything else left now historical there. The Eagle and Sun, superb building, put up in the later 19th century, and you can see inside it's a late 19th century public house. We lose too much. We bow down before development in Birmingham instead of putting our foot down and saying, yeah, we like this idea, but you've got to include this as well. And we've got to be more affirmative. We've got to be more strong in our, more assertive.
I think it needs to be picked up and put in the Black Country Museum or something like that, doesn't it?
Why can't they keep it there and open it up as a pub?
I don't know whether it's in the way of HS2, whether we can move it a couple of inches over in London by the time it gets there. We'll take that discussion somewhere else. But the Eagle and Sun is an incredibly important and beautiful building, that sort of stuff. Carl Chinn edited that. Emma Love, one of my original Mr. Birmingham photography portraits, gents. Good to see you there for that one.
Thank you.
Next one, Petro. Yeah, the BCU massive. So 1-0 to us.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
BCU's blue, so I'm going to have BCU as blue. You've got red as Birmingham University. We're 1-0 up the Blues. Let's see how we end up by the end of the day.
I think you will stay 1-0 up and more than that, mate, because it's about inclusiveness. It's about reflecting the society in which we live.
Okay, let's talk about 33 books. Now, normally, when I have people in front of me, I remember what everybody gets up to. Let's talk about the some of the books that you've got. We can't do all 33, Cole, and everything like that. But I think you talk about the 1,000 trades of Birmingham. Yeah. Have we lost that? Have we still got it? Or has these 1,000 trades gone? Have we lost 200 off the one end, and have we put 250 on the other end? Do you think?
We've lost a lot of them, Paul, unfortunately. Okay. And this comes back to something I know you're as passionate as I'm about, and I'm sure everybody listening is. Manufacturing matters. I'm in the service industries, you're in the service industries, but we all know that somebody has to make something. And we're very good at making things in this region. And it's not that manufacturers want handouts, but they need long-term investment. And we're not good at long-term investment in this country. We're not like Germany that does that well. We need to change. We've got to stop these short-term fixations that we've got in Britain. We've got some great manufacturing companies in Birmingham still. Let me give you an example. Brandauers. Now, Brandauer was set up by two foreigners, two people that came here, like so many of our businesses. This is another important point. Inclusiveness, embracing people, a Swiss and a German. Mr. Brandauer died a broken man because he was interned in the First World War. Their company used to make steel pens, the pen nibs.
Mm.
Then what happens? Monsieur Le Biro, pen nibs destroyed. Do you remember the floppy disk, Paul, with the little metal disc in the middle?
Yeah, of course.
Brandauer's moved on to make a pen. Now Brandauer's still in the Hockley district are making high precision pressings. Give you another example in the Black Country. Thompson's Boilermakers.
Yeah.
An offshoot of that now, NIE, Nuclear Industries, over in Ettingshaw. At the cutting edge of technology, emerging from a Boilermaker. So what we've got is we've got adaptability, we've got skills, we've got people that want to make things. We need to do this, Paul, because we have to add value. And part of manufacturing is not only adding value to a product, a piece of metal or whatever it is, adding value to people and communities. And that's what's happened to so much of Britain, is we've grabbed hold of the value from mining communities, shipbuilding communities, and said, you're not needed no more. We've got to change.
I think what's interesting is that what's happening around the globe and things like that. I mean, Jaguar Land Rover, fantastically iconic British brand that will never go there. They took it to China. Chinese didn't want to buy them because they wasn't made in Birmingham, they wasn't made in Castle Bromwich, they wasn't true Jaguars. So we understand that. We understand the value of the brand. What's interesting now, because of the pandemic and the unprecedented times we've been in, we're looking at the supply chain. So the industrial coffin, I think there's an upsurgence of the industrial coffin coming back, the supply chain for the manufacturers. Jaguar Land Rover, looking at there. I was talking to Andy Palmer, who's got a supply chain that's secure in mainland England, although they're not mass produced and things like that. But he had a backbone of that. The Aston Martin couldn't continue because of COVID, but theoretically because of all the parts and everything else, not just in time, back to traditional manufacturing and things like that. We talked about one of my projects that we might be bringing Austin cars back into the UK, back into Birmingham, to reproduce some of these iconic cars with a modern twist of them being electric. But that's not about me. Today is all about you. So looking about 1,000 trays, we've lost a few. Where are we? Are we at 500, you think, 600?
Really difficult to say now, Paul. We could still be in the high hundreds because of that was always Birmingham's strength, the subdivision of the trades. The fact that we weren't dependent on one particular trade. Let's give an example now of the jewellery quarter. Several firms in the jewellery quarter. We've got Firmins on the edge of the jewellery. 1655, probably Britain's oldest firm. Again, look at this, Paul. Started by a foreigner, a French Huguenot. Look at what has been given to us by people who've come here from elsewhere. Down the road, Toy Ken Spencer, the toys, French Huguenots, started in 1685. Just up the road, Patarini's, started by an Italian family. Just there in the jewellery quarter, on the edge of the jewellery quarter, how important it has been that Birmingham has reached out to us and the world has reached back to us. So I think we could still be, if we subdivide all these different trades, still be in the high hundreds. Apart from Jaguar Land Rover, though, in fact, I would say all of the firms, correct me if I'm wrong here, would all be medium or small size. Jaguar Land Rover would be the only large employer, wouldn't it now, Paul?
Well, yeah, I think so. There's still quite a few thousand and things like that, but there's a few other different businesses that are cropping up and stuff like that. There's 2 or 3 businesses that I know that are going to have in the next 3 to 5 years 3,000 or 4,000 employees. Really? We don't have the 20-odd thousand that we used to have with Dunlops and places
Lucas.
like that. Yeah, Lucas. The city was owned by Lucas at one point, wasn't it? A lot of Birmingham was named after bits of Lucas and things like that. That type of stuff.
Another example, Paul, at the high-tech centre. Yeah. By Villa Park, Goering. What a tremendous example of investment by a German company in cutting tools. Cutting tool on the edge of technology. Sorry, cutting edge technology. Get that right. It's fantastic company.
There's a couple of things that we're going to ask. I'm looking at the questions. Yeah. Somebody's asked, will you take us for a tour around the jewellery quarter?
I'll be very happy to.
Let's get when we can, obviously, we'll get all of our downtown members. Hopefully it's going to be an afternoon like this. Yeah. Might pop into 1 or 2 of the establishments and
of course.
Have a cheeky little slurp. And then you'll take us for a tour of the jewellery court and have a walk round. We'll come
I'll be delighted to.
And then if you talk about the Fattorini factory and the building, you look at the building's gorgeous, you know, and it's a nice sort of iconic building, that sort of thing. Which reminds me of something like that. People say to me, what do you like about Birmingham? What do I need to look at? And all I say is you need to look up. When you come to Birmingham, look up. Look at the cornices, look at the artwork, the Art Deco, 19th, 18th century buildings.
Paul, that people don't just go to Selfridges, they don't just go to the boring shopping centre. They go down to Derry 10, they go to parts of Birmingham they would not normally see. They go up to Soho House in Handsworth. They go up to Aston Hall. They go around the city and see what we've got to offer.
Amy Deakin's got a question. Fascinating stuff, Carl. She didn't comment about me, so it's just you, I think.
Thank you, Amy.
What's your legacy going to be, Carl? What do you want? What do you want to be known as?
Carl.
And what's our Carl going to be famous for? Writing 100 books?
No. I think what I want to be remembered for, if I could be so presumptuous, is that I never forgot my roots.
Brilliant. I love that. That's answered that one for Amy. Don't forget, anybody else, any questions, things like this. Carl, we're in difficult times, unprecedented times, and I hate that phrase. I hate that saying. Manufacturing's difficult. In fact, every sector's difficult in the UK now. Europe, globally, and things like that. What can we learn from history? We've had difficult times historically. The Brummies have rolled their sleeves up and got on with things, and that mindset, the Brummie mindset, one of my straplines, I don't think has gone. But what can we learn? I
think a couple of things there. I agree with you about our mindset, but I think we've also got to be careful that we don't see ourselves as different to everybody else. As Mancunians would say, the Mancunian mindset. Sheffield would say the same. And anywhere else in the world would say the same. So we've got to be careful, yes, be proud of who we are, but don't set ourselves up as something that's better or worse than anywhere else. When we look back into the past, Paul, we've got to be really careful that we don't look with hindsight, with arrogance, and look for exact examples from the past. The context of time and place changes. So let's give a couple of examples. One, the flu pandemic of 1918-19. Between 50 and 100 million people died across the world.
Wow.
Right? Now, people might say, well, it's very similar to what's happening today. No, it's not. Number one, because technology's changed. The world is a bigger place. Sorry, it was a bigger place then, it's a smaller place now. Number two, we know a lot more about viruses. We're much more advanced medicinally and technologically than where we were. But what can we learn is that people matter. That's the key. People matter. And governments acted very slowly in 1918. The war was ending. They were focused on the war. No real orders were sent from the government to local government about what to do. And by the time they reacted in 1919, when there was a second wave, they said, don't have large gatherings. It was too late. It was all over. Let's look at the 1930s, the mass unemployment of 30s. What's missing again there? A lack of investment in people and communities. I think the lesson to learn from the past, Paul, for me, is not exact examples, as I've said, but it's about the need to value people, to value communities, and above all, to value working class communities, because they have been devalued, undervalued for too long. And we need to give pride and respect to those communities, because they were full of pride and full of respect and had status because of the work that they did. And what we've seen over the last 70, 80 years is that the South East has sucked in the power economically that had drifted away a little bit, only a bit, during the Industrial Revolution. Now they've sucked it back. We need to have independent local government, in my opinion. And the only way you're ever going to get that, Paul, and this is where I'm a municipalist. I know you said, watch out, be careful.
Love that term,
I'm a municipalist. I believe that the only way that local government can work properly for the well-being and welfare of all of its people, like George Dawson, the great preacher, said in the 19th century, is if it owns all the facilities for the welfare and well-being of the our own water supply, our own gas supply, make money from them and spend it locally.
What we have got though is Andy Street now, haven't we? And I think he's got quite a good CEO running the combined authority. Won't go too much into that, obviously. But what we have got, we've got a politician that's from the city, that represents the city, that he's dragging some of that money back, dragging some of the.
But it's all handouts from London, Paul. What we should be in charge of is our own income, that we should be generating it ourselves. We had our own bank when me and you were growing up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But I think we can start doing some things like this, and I think we can start manufacturing. I think we can start bringing some of the, some of the wealth back into the region. I think we're on the turn, but I think we've got quite a long way to go and all that. What I'm going to do now is just Matthew Till, who you might not know, works at BCU. Matthew Till is a Walsall lad, strongest black country accent you could possibly add. Went to Oxford University, graduated Oxford University with first class honours. Absolute gentleman guy, has said, does the panel agree that it's difficult to break the barriers, perceived or real, that the Boston accent that we have, that may not be favoured by business leaders or politicians, that don't speak our accents? Does our accent hold us back, do you think?
Yes, unfortunately it does. What is it about, and I'm not saying Scottish, Welsh or Irish society, about English society, where we are judged not on what we say, but the sound of our voice. I've had it all my public career. Oh, you don't really talk like that, you put it on. No, I don't. This is how I talk, this is who I am. This is who I am. Oh, you make money from your accent. Excuse me, I'd have made a lot more money if I hadn't got a probably accent. But this prejudice, this English obsession with the sound of a voice. Judge me what's in there.
I don't know
what comes out of my soul.
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with our accents, so we'll deal with that one. The only thing that I might have a problem with, Matt Tilley, is unfortunately he's a Walsall fan. But let's not do that, because
support your local team.
Agreed, but we're still 1-0 to the Blues and against the Reds anyway. And then Matthew Jones, who runs a training provider, and he's done a brilliant job during lockdown. I think, I don't know how many tens of thousands he's given away for people to upskill during lockdown and things like that. So he's Oxbridge Home Learning. He wants to make the comment, my mum tuned into your radio show without fail every week from time to time. Thanks for everything you've done for Birmingham. Question is, if you could make one change to Birmingham right now, and let's take it a little bit further, if you had a magic wand, you could wave that wand over Birmingham and make one change, what would that be, Carl?
Eradicate poverty.
And have we got poverty in Birmingham?
Yes.
Yeah, we have.
Exactly.
We have.
And coming back to the point about universities and reaching out to disadvantaged communities, eradicate that. We should not have disadvantaged communities. People should not be at a disadvantage because of where they come from, the sound of their voice, the colour of their skin, their hairstyle, whatever it might be. We have to eradicate prejudice and poverty.
And then let's raise the point about charities. We've both done quite a bit for charities, haven't we? Your passion for charities, and you've been working a lot longer and a lot harder than I have for charities. What drives you for the charities? Just that mindset of settling things, getting the equilibrium, getting it right, make sure it's a level playing field?
And it's also about working for me. I haven't been able to do so much the last few years because of family commitments with my mum, seriously, etc. But before, I used to be out at least once a week, working with local groups, communities and charities. And the reason for that was, when I first started out, I was asked to compare a big event. I'm not saying who, why, what, where for. Yeah. And we filled this huge venue. And I did it for nothing. Obviously, I wouldn't charge. But the next year, they paid a celebrity £20,000 to do what I'd done.
Yeah.
For nothing. And I thought, I won't work for those big charities again. I won't do it. I will work with, not for, work with local groups. So it was, I remember one occasion we gave a talk for the Darlaston Fellowship of the Disabled. And I forget the chap's name, forgive me for that. But it's going back a few years. And he sat at Darlow Library for weeks selling the tickets for this event, and we held it at the school, and we raised about £700 or £800. That was more fulfilling to me. Yeah. Another occasion, the same school, we managed to raise funds to take the youngsters overnight and back the next night to the First World War trenches by Wipers, Ypres.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know,
Brilliant.
so for me, it was about local groups, local charities, grassroots.
And that phone ringing, it might have been another booking. But what I'll ask you, on the 26th of November, all being well, we've got the City of Birmingham Business Awards. But I can ask you, and it's called Britannia, is our brand, and it's going to be called Birmingham, because it's going to be a Bromley twist. If I can ask you to say a few words at that event, that'll be really good. I'll start it and I'll hand over to you, and I think people will enjoy that.
I'll be able to. I'm just going to say something quickly. We haven't had the phone ring of an afternoon throughout the lockdown. It's rang thickly twice.
You know what it is? It's somebody that's sitting listening to this. Somebody's listening to this, and they go in. They've got your home number. We'll phone this every 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes on the hour, at 1:15. And I think Petro makes a good point. This is why Eddie Hughes and Jess Phillips are great advocates for Bromley Parliament. They're busting. So this busting's going to follow us around. Imagine social media is going to go a little bit live this afternoon and things like that. Now, right, let's go back. Yeah. Let's talk about something that that's been mentioned, about the Eagle and Ton and things like that. Let's talk about some of Birmingham's famous pubs. So when I started working in the market, we used to go into the Market Tavern, the Toreador, and a couple of other places like that. And I was far too young, barra boy and things like that, but you did a day's work and you'd be given a pint. It tasted awful. But it was it was the thing to do. You're working like a man, so you'd have to drink like a man. And I think I'd have half of something, and then I'd
be mild in them days, Paul. It would be mild.
Yeah,
I think
it was bitter actually, or something like that. Yeah, wide, warm, and everything. Tell me about some of our famous pubs. We've got one of the oldest pubs in the country, haven't we? Certainly in the Midlands, in Digbeth.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's Derry Tend. So I want to pick a lot of...
Passionate about Derry Tend, yeah.
The name of Derry Tend is disappearing. And now Digbeth has spread. Yes, great. But Digbeth stops at the River Ray.
Yeah.
The old line of the River Ray by the Little Bull's Head. Even people talking about Camp Hill now as Digbeth. And what we do when we take away those old names, it's not me being pedantic. I've had people who grew up in Derry Tend saying, Carl, I feel like my history's been snatched away, and people call it Digbeth. Yeah, the Old Crown, though, don't forget, it hasn't always been a pub. It was originally a guild house.
Was it? Okay.
Yes, in the later Middle Ages. Not 1368, as we always think, which is on the wall, but about 1490. Because of when it was refurbished, and a huge sum was spent by a wonderful Irish family, the Brennans, on it, to save it for us. They had to take dendrology samples of the wood, late 15th century. The Lad in the Lane in Erdington's also really old. So we're so fortunate that we've got a few late medieval Tudor buildings that have survived in Birmingham. Another one from a similar period, Stratford House at the top of Camp Hill.
Yeah.
Places like Blakesley Hall, we're very lucky that it survived. The Golden Lion, coming back to the point about the Eagle and Ton, the Golden Lion, going to rack and ruin in Cannon Hill Park, should be brought back to Derry Tend.
I think so, yeah.
So we've got lots of pub. I think we're losing the small backstreet pub. My favourite was the White Swan in Bradford Street. Lovely bar, beautiful bar, small smoke room at the back, as we used to call it. Another great pub, high, really, at the pier, the classic Birmingham pubs would be the Barton Arms.
Brilliant, yeah.
In Aston. But the small local pubs, those are the ones, for me, I like that, the atmosphere of them.
So if my history serves me right, the Hippodrome used to be by the Barton Arms, didn't it? Or it was
the Aston Hip.
The Aston Hippodrome. And then we'd had quite a few famous people that had performed. Yeah. And they came into the Barton Arms and signed the wall, didn't they?
Well, a great friend of mine, a villa photographer, Terry Weir, has been dead many years. A wonderful bloke, Terry was. And he gave me a copy of a photo of Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention.
Outside the Bartons, ready to go back across the road to the Aston Inn for another performance.
Incredible, isn't it? And all of these people signed the wall and things like that. Emma Love, let's not forget the Woodman Blues Pub.
Okay, we'll give you that one, Emma. Lovely pub. Really important as well, because the Woodman is the last of the Italian quarter of Birmingham.
Okay, so let's do two things, Carl. Let's go back and let's me and you have a drink in each one of these pubs. Just to reminisce. But what I want to ask you now is, Birmingham is such a diverse, a population. I grew up on Borsley Green, with Hindus, with Sikhs, with Muslims, Jamaican family and everything like that. And we all integrated really well. Birmingham was built on the back of different nationalities and different people. Give us a little bit of a spin about that. You mentioned the Irish, you mentioned how good they had been to the city and what they've done and everything else like that. Let's have a whirlwind tour around the world. Who built Birmingham?
First of all, it's very important to bear in mind that for hundreds of years, Birmingham was very much an English city.
Yeah.
And was very much a Warwickshire English city. The vast majority of people that moved here were like my ancestors on the Chinn side from nearby villages. As Birmingham grew in the 19th century, it then became a magnet for further afield. So we had Scots, Welsh, Irish, particularly from Roscommon, Mayo, Galway, and also Dublin.
Okay.
We had a small Italian community that settled right by where Emma was talking about. I think, sorry Emma if I've got your name wrong there, but by the Woodman. And they were from the Camino Valley, which is now in Lazio, but between Naples and Rome. They were from the communes of Atina and Gallinaro and in Piccinisco. Intermarried, tightly connected, same extended family network really of the Irish. People coming from villages like Tolskinore and in Roscommon, connecting with each other, looking after each other when they got there. The same as my English ancestors would have done, coming in from villages like Rowington. When you're young, you settle amongst those who are similar to you. And that's the pattern of migration for most of the peoples who have come to Birmingham. The Jews who were coming in the later 19th century were slightly different in that they were escaping the pogroms in the Russian Empire, the attacks on them. Birmingham didn't have a big Jewish community, and it was split for many years between wealthier German Jews who settled in Edgbaston and Ashkenazi Jews, Yiddish-speaking Jews who had fled the pogroms.
Yeah.
We also had, from the 1930s, one of the first communities from outside Europe settling in Birmingham, the Yemeni community. Very important, Paul. They've been overlooked for too long, and they shouldn't be overlooked. They have made a major contribution to Birmingham. They've hidden their light under a bushel, and it's up to us, all of us, to draw it out. The first, I'm going to hope I pronounce this correctly, and please, anybody who's Muslim, forgive me if I mispronounce it. The first Zawaya, the first prayer house in Birmingham, was actually in a house that Yemeni families had bought in Edward Road in Balsall Heath.
Wow, okay.
And the Yemenis were Lashkars. They were merchant seamen, very brave men. Because of racism, unfortunately, they were always down in the holds. So when the Japanese attacked, they died first. Other Lashkars were Bengalis, Bangladesh today, nearly all from Sylhet in the north. Also Kashmiris, from Azad Kashmir, as we would now call it, from Mirpur, from Dajjal, from, again, please forgive me for any mispronunciations, Hyderabad, Chakswari, all by the Mangla Dam. Lots of people coming here as well from the Swat Valley and Pashtuns who had served with the British Army. Sikhs who were coming from around the Jalandhar district, not Jalandhar itself, but the district, the towns and villages around Jalandhar. Hindus from the same district in the Punjab. So the first people from outside Europe that settled in numbers in Birmingham after the First World War had fought or worked for the British Army or Merchant Navy, as did the first African Caribbean men, who had 5,000 joined the RAF. Without Jamaican bauxite, how would we have gone on with aluminium? Without West Indian men and women who answered the call, along with the Irish and others after the war to rebuild Birmingham, where would we be? And so many of these men and women were skilled when they got here but couldn't get skilled jobs. But what would we have done in the National Health Service, in our transport system, without such men and women? So we owe them a great debt. And you're right, Paul, that we We were all together. I fear that one of the problems we're facing in modern Birmingham is that people are becoming separate.
Yeah.
And that we need to invest heavily in the bullring markets, because if not, what's happening in I fear is that the city centre is being turned into an enclave for the wealthy, and that the neighbourhoods are splitting. And instead of us all meeting equally in the bullring markets, we're being kept apart.
See, one of my first jobs was working in the market. So I was a barrow boy at a ridiculous, like 12, 13 years old. Now I think my parents have probably been sent to in front of the magistrate for some of the things there like that. Yeah. I don't think we were quite sweeping chimneys, but we were certainly working in the markets with Dad and that type of stuff. And I think that's where I got my integration, my education, and really the appreciation of the city. 800 years worth of market. And if you look at Edgbaston Street and you look at St Martin Church, my middle name is Martin, and I was named after the church and things like that, which is quite something that I hold on to. The years, Birmingham was made around the bullring, wasn't it? Nice. The bullring market, that's where we were created. We shouldn't forget, we look at the City of Birmingham flag, it's the bull, you know, that sort of stuff. It's a pride and that sort of stuff, and that's where we go. I think for me, the markets are incredibly important, and I think what will happen with the new markets coming through and everything else like that, it's going to move, and the markets have moved across the city, haven't they? You know, from the old Bull Street, they were pushed that way, they've come back, they've gone back.
They were always around where the bullring is.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be a pessimist, because I'm not a pessimistic person, but the lack of care and thought for our outdoor and indoor traders over the last 75 years has been atrocious. Yeah. And they need to be cherished, because we have all traders of all types in the bullring, representing all kinds of brummies, and we all meet there equally. And it needs to be a place that is not only a place for shopping, but of entertainment and of communal solidarity.
I remember when I used to work there, by St Martin Church going up the ramp, there used to be people literally on soapboxes standing there. There was somebody talking about like socialism, there was somebody talking about religion, there was somebody else like that. And you'd walk along as a kid. I'd stand and listen to them for a few minutes and think, I don't want to listen to that. And I'd walk. Sometimes I'd be there a quarter of an hour, 20 minutes listening to that. So these are the people that are educating way before the internet and things like that. So what's interesting is I still go to the meat market, the fish market every Saturday that I can. I still go there and buy all of my stuff from there and things like that. There's 2 or 3 names that are going up on the list that comment and that do that as well. Di Vernon has made a comment. Now, Di is the founder and CEO of Employability UK. I sit there as a patron for that. And we guide people and I give them the right mindset to be ready for employment, which is quite interesting. We can talk about mindsets there. What inspiration you were, Carl. Thank you for everything you do to remind us of a wonderful heritage, legacy. Will you see for the 2022 games? So the Commonwealth Games, let me put it in better terms. What's the legacy that the Commonwealth Games will do for us?
It's really important that very quickly the people who are engaged with organising the games reach out to the peoples of Birmingham. We're not far off it now. Yes, we've had the COVID, we know that, and it's put things back. But we don't want a situation like the City of Culture bid, which was completely devoid of connection with brummies of all kinds. They've got to reach out. So if there's going to be a legacy, guys, it has to be the ASAP that the Commonwealth Games organisers here reach out to the working class neighbourhoods of Birmingham and make them all feel included, not only say in Perry Bar, but in Longbridge in the south, in Windsor Green in the west, in Shard End in the east, across Birmingham, bringing us all together.
We had, I sat with John Crabtree and spoke to him, who's the chair of the Commonwealth Games. I spoke to him about the charities, the street charities. There's an international, there's a national and a local charity. Yeah. And I said the Commonwealth Games is an ideal opportunity for us to reshape, permanently support and change for the best, the benefits of some charities. Yeah. He asked me to put a bit of a paper together. So I worked with James Walsh, who's the head of Legacy. We put it together. They've adopted 10 charities. Underneath that, there's 20. And there's a cascade of charities. All of these charities have been embraced by the Games. And they're doing that. Ian Reid, who's been quite a popular panellist for us and things like that. although he's migrationary, and we've definitely got to work on his Scottish accent so he can be a little bit more Peaky Blinderish, he's so ingrained in the city and working hard for the city. So the people I think at the Commonwealth Games are doing well. They're inviting us to do a street art festival. They'll support us for that. They're inviting us to do this. There's a lot of opportunity for the Commonwealth Games. But what will it do for us? It will put us on the map globally. It'll bring interest in the city. People will look at what we're doing. People look at us Brummies. But I think we've got to get it right. What's the right message that we need to send to the world?
The message that we need to send is that Birmingham is a welcoming city, an open city, and a city for all. And it is a city worth investing in. But you're right, Paul, we have to get it right, because if you look at so many of these legacy projects, look, for example, at the football stadium that West Ham now playing, you know, what is the real true legacy for the people of the East End? We need to embrace all of the peoples of Birmingham. And I think everybody needs to feel they have a stake in the Commonwealth Games. And that means bringing in community leaders and from all of the communities of Birmingham. We need to make sure that the leadership reflects the city.
Pat, this is one me and you're going to jump right on this, Carl. Get ready, right?
Come on.
Patrick says, this is very insightful webinar. Thank you. What does the panel think about the Birmingham tag, the second city?
Oh, right. Right. Can I go first? What a pathetic title.
Yeah.
Second city. Why do we stand? Oh, we're the second city. Who remembers who's second in the FA Cup? Who remembers who comes second in any Olympic Games? What we should be saying, and I feel this vehemently, is shake off this second city tag. We are Birmingham, second to none.
We are the first city in the UK.
You know?
You know, we are UK central. We are the first city.
I don't set us up as better than Manchester or Salford or Leeds or Sheffield, Bristol, Norwich, but we should be much more proud of who we are. You don't hear Liverpool say, oh, you know, we used to be the second city, but we'll let Birmingham have it now. If Manchester wants to be the second city, let them get on with it. We are Birmingham. Be proud of who we are.
I'm slightly more cheekier, I think, and I say I'm proud. I've got a swagger of being Brummie, and I know for a fact you have. Carl, listen, we could be talking all afternoon, but we've gone way over our time. We're still getting questions going. We've still got a lot of people listening to us. I'm going to go do another 10, 15
all
minutes.
Right,
make sure that people are still happy. Clearly, me and you could be sitting talking all afternoon and night. And
I used to say, Carl, you were inoculated with a gramophone needle when you was born.
Now, let's pick up on this. You know, let's look at our position in the UK, in Europe, and everything else like that. We are the gateway, or could be the gateway of Europe, of everything else like that. What do we need to do? I'm going to start off by saying we need to increase Birmingham, the airport. We need a second runway. We need to be truly an international airport. We need to invest in that. HS2, and I know there's been a couple of comments about HS2. I think investing in infrastructure, and I think is critical, but the infrastructure for me is also the airport. It's getting that runway, an international airway. Let's be China ready, as our good friend James Wong says. Let's be China ready. What do you think?
I remember I was asked this question about 1998. What does Birmingham need to do to be a 21st century city? Infrastructure, number one, I agree with you. Number two, to become a major banking centre again. We're actually becoming that, thanks to Deutsche Bank and other banks in Birmingham. Number three, to be a technological centre. We've got a long way to go there. A long way to go. Number four, Paul, and unfortunately, councils of different political complexions have neglected this. We needed to be a media city. Manchester and Salford are the media city now after London. We've lost out there. You know, we've lost the big studios, ATV studios in town, the BBC, Pebble Mill's gone. We need to address that. We need to look at the media side. We need to look at technology. We need to make sure that all of our youngsters have opportunities for education and for achievement. Not necessarily academic achievement, but vocational, and we need to value everybody, every skill.
I'm going to, Mercian Studios has been agreed. He's going to take place in Digbeth, and he's all over that, working with Stephen Knight. also is interested is there's another studio that's going to be in all around the NEC, which I sit on the board of. We've got a lot of interest, a lot of investment and things like that, so we're going to bring that there. But, you know, the media studies that we've got in the city and things like that, the people just dissipate, they go north or they go south.
Yeah.
All of that's going to come there. The infrastructure of the Commonwealth Games, the polishing off, the cleaning up of the city, the point that we're going to go out there, the point that we're going to be in the eye, you know, the centre of the universe, albeit for a week or two. But I think with people like you, with a mindset, with a legacy, with everything that we do, with a little bit of a Brummy swagger, which you're not wholly sold on, but I think we can polish that off. I mean, I think we can get that back. Now, Emma Love's just going to say, absolutely wonderful, Carl. She thinks you're brilliant and everything else like that. Okay. I think it's the Carl Chinn Appreciation Society.
Well, listen, I tell you what, if you just notice what I've just done, I've had the flipping mouse thing there for all. I think, oh, what's that there? It's myself I've been doing.
Okay.
Thank you, Emma.
Abby Goldie says, an amazing event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emma.
I'm going to leave you, obviously, as our guest. I've got to say, I'm absolutely delighted that you've really agreed to come on here. I know how busy you are, you know, and probably during the time you've probably knocked out another 2 or 3 chapters of a book. I can see your arms going like that. But I just want to say, Carl, as it always is to be around you, it's an absolute privilege. You know, you're an inspiration to us. You lead the city, you lead me, you lead everybody else. Just a few moments of your words, pearls of wisdom, and leave you with that. And then we'll say goodbye to all our viewers.
First of all, can I thank you and everybody listening? I don't see myself in those terms. I see myself as one of you. We're all together. We're all equal. I gain my inspiration from the people I belong to. And there are so many inspiring people in this city. And we have to, coming back really to something we said right at the start, Paul, we need to value people.
Yeah.
We need to value everybody. Everybody's got a talent. Everybody's got something to give. It's that unlocking that door for the potential. You know that in the roles that you've been working through. I'm sure everybody that's listening agrees. We need to value people, and we need to listen, and we need to work with and not for.
Agreed. Professor Carl Chinn MBE, thank you very much for your time.
Cheers. Thank you to everybody listening as well, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ta-ra.